Greetings, kids. Are you ready for story time? Come on in. Just think of me as Mr. Rogers, and we're here together with story time. So this one time in band camp, I had this casket sitting in my backyard for 2 years. During that 2 years, there was one time I was up in the woods. I lived in the woods, and the guy came to clean out the septic tank, and he had to dig a hole right next to the casket. And there's a deck overlooking the backyard, and I was up there with an old buddy of mine, both of us looking the way we do. And we're leaning over the deck, watching him dig the hole. He's really nervous, you know. This guy was just jittery, you know. He really thought like someone was gonna kill him. And after like 10 minutes of digging this hole, he goes, he finally got the nerve up, and he goes, is there anyone in that casket? And I stopped mid-sentence with my friend, and I looked down and I said, not yet, keep digging. And he just threw the shovel and ran out of the yard like 100 miles an hour. I had to chase him out to the driveway and say, dude, I'm just fucking with you, you know? But oh my God, I think he shit his pants for real. Once upon a time, in a tattoo studio far, far away, at about 4 in the morning, I'm in there painting, and I heard something at the door of the shop. Now, there's no windows or anything. It was up on the 3rd floor in a warehouse building, and, you know, I heard some scratching at the door, and I come to discover that someone's picking the locks to my shop. Now, I was a repo man for 6 years, and I happen to know exactly what lock picking sounds like. So I'm thinking it's a bunch of kids screwing around at first, you know, and so I ran into my office and I thought, what's the scariest thing I could pull off to scare the shit out of these kids, you know? And I looked around and I found this pitchfork leaning against the wall. So I grabbed it and I ran out to the front door and I stood there and I waited. And I just get impatient. I need this to happen now. So I unlocked it for him and I swung the door open, and it was right out of a movie. The guy was like this, and he's like, oh. I see him, it's 3 guys. I realize immediately that these are not kids, these are professional thieves. And I come charging out of the shop, wielding a pitchfork, screaming like a lunatic. Instinctually, he grabbed the front of the pitchfork. And when he grabbed it, you know, it's pretty much use it or lose it. So obviously, I'm more inclined to use it than run away. So I came charging at him with the pitchfork and ended up stabbing him in the kidney. And it was crazy because I could feel the rusty, sharp pitchfork thongs penetrating his skin. It was like, kapunk, you know? And it was great, actually. Never stabbed a guy before. So I stabbed him with the pitchfork, and the 3 of them are standing there now for 10 minutes, literally 10 minutes, arguing with me as to why I stabbed them with a pitchfork. Meanwhile, keep in mind, you know, these guys were breaking into my shit. He's like, you know, why'd you stab me with a pitchfork? I said, if you don't get the fuck out of here right now, I'm gonna fill you with a lot more holes than those. So I called the police after they left because I figured he's on his way to the hospital and somehow this is going to work out where I get in trouble. So I figured I'll be the first one to the police and cover my ass. So I called the cops and said, yeah, these 3 guys are just trying to break in to my place, and I fought them off with a big stick, you know. I didn't really say I stabbed them with a pitchfork because, you know, that's stupid. And they never even showed up. Yeah, but the next day was a convention, tattoo convention in New York. I was like a little kid running around, hey, guess what I did last night, you know? And like, I stabbed the guy with a pitchfork, you know? I was totally a kid in a candy store. How about that time I killed an old man by accident. I know what you're thinking, but no, it was an accident. I think it was in Pennsylvania, but it was late at night, and it was a sleet storm. It was icy, blizzardy, and we had been outside, or we came outside or something, and this old man slipped and fell in his driveway. What he was doing out there at like whatever hour it was, I have no idea, but he slipped and fell. So we went over there to see, you know, help him up and everything, but with the way that he fell and he hit his head, I'm like, I kind of took charge of the situation of like 3 or 4 of us, and you know, he's laying there in the sleet on his driveway, and he's like, get me up, get me up. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, dude, we can't move him. He might have broke his neck, you know? So I was really afraid to lift him up, because I always heard, you know, if they broke their neck, you could paralyze them or kill them, you know, by moving them, right? So I'm trying to do the right thing, and I'm like, don't move him, I got this, you know? We put a coat over him, you know, but he's still, his back is against a sheet of ice in the pouring sleet. We waited for the ambulance to get there, which took forever. I guess because I insisted that we did not move him and pick him up off the ground for his own safety. He died in the hospital of pneumonia the next day. So it's kind of my fault. But, you know, I laugh, but I don't, you know. It wasn't certainly funny then, but hey, at least I can tell a story about how I killed a guy once. This is my kid, who's much more disturbed than I am.
No way.
Tabitha, Scabazoid. What else do I call you?
Scabazoidicus maximus.
Scabazoidicus maximus.
Turd.
Yes. Yeah. So, you got any stories?
Yeah, remember that time you carved a monster out of watermelon for my 6-year-old birthday?
You were 6? I don't remember that at all.
It was so
That's the
cute.
best you got? I'm telling stories about dead people and you're talking about watermelons?
Yeah, watermelon's delicious.
You're just not evil enough to be my kid. I don't know.
I am, I'm super evil.
Here's Tabby's teenage years right here in a nutshell. My role as a father is to make sure whoever she's dating is acceptable. So my job, and the way we did it was, she liked to scare her boyfriends. She would never admit it, but she loved to bring them home to meet Dad. Because when they come home to meet Dad, they're already nervous because she's built them up. You know, I'm this crazy lunatic, you know. I don't know why, but yeah, they would come over and meet me for the first time. Now keep in mind, at that time, my house was, my dining room was an autopsy table from like the 50s. Big 10-foot long stainless steel monster with the hoses and the grill and everything.
It was awesome.
And 2 church pews, and that was my dining room set. Oh, and the body parts hanging from the ceiling, rubber body parts hanging from the ceiling from meat chains, like Cenobite stuff, you know. So we'd sit them down at the table, and I would play that role of like the creepy guy, you know, and I would not say much. You know, they'd say, hello, Mr. Booth, or more like, hello, Mr. Booth, you know. And I'd look them up and down, and I'd grunt, and I'd turn and walk away. And then I would sit them down at the table and say, let's have a talk. I'd get up from the table, I'd walk into the other room, I'd come back, and I took this jar, and I put it on the table, and I said, you know what those are? Those are testicles. A whole jar full of them. I suggest you have her home by 11. And they would just lose it. And she'd be snickering like she is now, you know, because she knows they're shitting bricks, because she's primed them for it. We were a team when she was a kid, like you wouldn't believe.
We were.
We would pretend.
That time we went to Costco.
Yeah. We would pretend. Here's Booth family shit right here.
12 then.
Yeah, you were like 12 years old.
Yeah.
And we started this game between us where whenever we were in not whenever, but when we were in the right situation in public view where there were strangers around, like Costco, we would pick our victim and we would position ourselves. So at one end of the aisle, there's some people little family or old lady or something. And we position ourselves so she's standing with her back to them, and I'm facing them down the aisle. And I'd start yelling at her for like picking up the wrong paper towels or something. And I'd be like, "God damn kid!" And I would do a stage slap and slap my hand, but they can't see my hand because her head's in the way. And she timed it perfect every time. I'm so proud of you. She would spin around when I'd pretend to hit her, and she'd spin around and she'd fall to the floor and start crying. And people would turn and look and they'd see it. And then I would just look at them. And they would freeze like deer in the headlights. And then she'd get up and we'd laugh and we'd run off, you know. But like that moment of a guy like me beating the shit out of his little girl in the middle of Costco. Thank you for joining us in this father-daughter moment. I'd like to end it with saying, you know, one time when she was a kid, we got in a big fight. She called me an asshole. And I was very hurt for about a half a second. And then I said, if I'm an asshole, that would make you a turd. This is my turd. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you.